Hi, my name is Minsuk, and I am very excited to share our work on workflow graphs, a computational model of collective task strategies for 3D design software. This research was done with my mentors and collaborators, Lafraniere at Chatham Labs, Juho Kim, my PhD advisor at KAIST, George Fitzmaurice at Autodesk Research, and Tovi Grossman at the University of Toronto. When using 3D design software like Fusion 360 or AutoCAD, there are common situations in which many users perform the same task. For example, when multiple people are performing the same tutorial or completing an assignment for a course, or working on slight variations of subtasks that frequently occur in the context of a larger task, such as 3D modeling joints and bolts when designing furniture. There are often multiple different ways to complete a task when each user brings their own unique set of skills and knowledge to bear on a set goal. However, users are often unaware of alternative methods that may be more efficient or suitable for specific constraints like tool uses or post-processing. Most help systems answer questions such as, what does this do? Or how can I do this? Or how have others done this? But the transitions to expert behaviors, users also need to know what is a better way of doing this. Or to explore the alternatives and variations, users also need to know, how can I do this differently? To answer these questions, we propose the idea of automatically discovering the different means of accomplishing a goal from the interaction traces of multiple users and encoding them in a graphical representation. In this research, we capture and analyze workflow variations being used by the user community. These alternative workflows are encoded into a graphical representation called workflow graph, or WGraph. And by comparing the workflows being used by the active user to this workflow graph, we can help users discover alternative methods to expand their workflow knowledge. Now, what exactly is the concept behind workflow graph structure? Workflow graphs, or WGraphs, encode multiple demonstrations of a fixed task based on commonalities in the workflows employed by the users. For example, the workflow graph shown here is a representation of 6 different workflows. Nodes represent semantically similar states across demonstrations. The edges represent alternative workflows for subtasks. The width of the edges represents the number of distinct workflows between the two states. From a workflow graph, there are 2 major ways a workflow can vary. First, there may be high-level alternative workflows that can be followed, consisting of different substeps. And even within the same workflow, there may be alternative ways to complete an individual substep. Let's look at how a workflow graph is constructed from multiple streams of user demonstrations. To generate the workflow graph, our system takes multiple example workflows for a task. The sequence of events for each user is considered as the set of nodes. Each node is marked up with the metadata such as screen recordings, command log data, and scene graph snapshots. We add a start node with the directed edges to the first node of each demonstration, and we merge the final nodes of each demonstration into an end node. At this point, each demonstration represents a distinct directed path from the start node to the end node. Next, the pipeline merges sequence of nodes with similar geometry within each user's workflow by clustering the snapshots of 3D models geometry associated with the nodes along each path. Finally, the pipeline detects equivalent intermediate nodes across the different users' workflows. We then merge all nodes with a similarity value below a threshold. The most crucial part of the pipeline is determining the similarity between 3D model snapshots. We use an autoencoder to translate 3D point cloud data for each 3D model snapshots into a high-dimensional vector. We compare these vectors using cosine distance to quantify the similarity between the models. We used autoencoder structure trained with the classification loss, which is an effective solution over other geometry comparison methods as it removes the ad hoc decisions about parameter values, instead learns to classify geometries from the data it observes. For training the autoencoder, we used all of the 3D ShapeNet data, the largest publicly available repository for 3D models, covering about 55 common object categories and 50,000 unique 3D models. To investigate this approach for constructing workflow graphs, we instrumented Tinkercad, a 3D solid modeling application popular in the maker community, to gather screen recordings, command sequences, and changes in the CSG trees of the specific 3D models being built. Using our custom version of Tinkercad, we collected user demonstrations for two tasks, modeling a mug and modeling a standing desk. These tasks were selected because they could be completed under 30 minutes and represent different levels of complexity. The mug task is relatively simple, requiring fewer operations and fewer primitives, while the desk task can be complex and time-consuming if the user does not know the knowledge of particular Tinkercad tools, such as a line and ruler. The desk model also requires approximately twice as many primitives as the mug model. 14 participants were recruited for the mug task and 11 participants were recruited for the desk task, but we excluded participants who did not follow the instructions or failed to upload their recordings in the final step. After applying this criteria, we had 8 participants for the mug task and 6 participants for the standing desk task. And here are the results. Here we see the workflow graph created from a set of 8 distinct workflows for modeling a mug. The workflow graph reveals several interesting patterns. First, the higher-level method followed by most users was to first construct the body of the mug, and then build and added the handle. Other users first built the handle and later cut out the center of the mug. The W graph for the standing desk task is now shown. The graph is more complex than that of the mug task, reflecting the added complexity of the task, but we do observe similarities in how the graph captures the task. In particular, we can see paths that reflect the different orders in which users created the 3 main parts of the desk. I'll introduce 3 possible applications that W-graph facilitates. We'll continue to use the mug example. W-suggest can be used to suggest alternate workflows to users. The user first records themselves performing a 3D modeling task. During this recording, W-suggest is capturing the metadata associated with their workflows. The system analyzes their workflow and compares their workflow to an existing W-graph. Based on this analysis, alternate workflows for the portion of the task can be suggested, such as the shortest or most common workflow. Users can click the video to view the workflow suggestions. W-guide also provides recommendations, but does so in real time as the user works. While working on 3D modeling tasks, W-guide shows possible next steps. These videos are populated based on strategies captured in the workflow graph. Specifically, the panel recommends video demonstrations that match the current user's state and proceed one edge forward in the W-graph. Finally, an instructor feedback system is possible. The W-instruct system uses W-graph as a tool for users to explore the multiple ways that a model can be constructed. This can be useful for instructors to provide feedback to students and assess their work. W-instruct supports instructors in understanding the different methods used in their students to complete a task. By examining the graph, an instructor can see the different approaches taken by the students. This user can filter workflows by their characteristics and view individual steps in the workflow. Now I'd like to talk about a couple of discussions that I find particularly interesting. We acknowledge that creative process such as 3D modeling isn't a linear process, but users experiment and explore a lot. It would be interesting to investigate whether these practices for using undos and arrays could be detected and represented in a workflow graph. This could take the form of edges that go back to a previous state, creating directed cycles and self-loops in the graph. Applications built on top of a W graph could also use the number of undos as metrics for ranking paths through the graph to identify instances of exploratory behavior, as shown in the diagram. The W-graph approach is scalable by design as it relies on computational comparisons of 3D models rather than human interventions such as expert labeling or processing. However, as we observed in the desk model example, more work is needed to understand how the structure of W-graphs produced by our pipeline change as the complexity of the model grows. In particular, there is the question of how the parameters for the identifying similar intermediate states may need to change in response to growing number of workflows and growing complexity in order to produce the graph that's at the right granularity for a given application. Though we demonstrated our approach for 3D modeling software, the W-graph construction approach would easily be straightforward to extend it to other software applications and domains. For many domains such as 2D graphics and textual media, this technique could be generalized by simply substituting an appropriate feature extraction mechanism for that domain. To summarize, this work has contributed a conceptual approach for representing the different means by which a fixed goal can be achieved in feature-rich software based on recordings of user demonstrations, and has demonstrated a scalable pipeline for constructing such a representation for 3D modeling software. Overall, we see this work as the first step toward enabling a new generation of help and learning systems for feature-rich software powered by data-driven models of tasks and workflows. We'd like to thank Autodesk Research for their support in this research, especially Aditya Sanghi and Kaveh Hassani, who provided invaluable advice and guidance and techniques for comparing 3D models using geometric deep learning. And also Fraser Anderson and Justin Matejka for keeping our servers alive through the worst accidents imaginable. We'd also like to thank researchers at KAIST and University of Toronto for their valuable feedback. Please visit our homepage, our project website, minsukchang.com/wgraph for more detailed information. Thank you.